A man went to the doctor and said, "Doc, you gotta check my leg. Something's really wrong. Just put your ear up to my thigh. You'll hear it." The doctor, a bit skeptical, leaned in and placed his ear against the man's thigh. To his shock, he heard a faint voice whisper, "Hey, buddy, can you lend me $20? I really need $20. Startled, the doctor pulled back. "This is incredible. How long has this been happening?" "That's nothing, Doc," the man replied. "Put your ear to my knee." Hesitant but curious, the doctor pressed his ear against the knee. This time he heard, "Come on, man, I just need $10. Just $10, please." The doctor's eyes widened. "I've never seen or heard anything like this in my life." "Wait, Doc, there's more," the man urged. "Listen to my ankle." Now completely baffled, the doctor leaned down and placed his ear to the man's ankle. Sure enough, a tiny voice pleaded, "Please, I just need $5. Just $5, I swear." The doctor stood up, shaking his head in disbelief. "I have no idea what to tell you," he said, frantically flipping through his medical reference books. "This isn't in any textbook I've ever read." Then he paused, thought for a moment, and sighed. "But if I had to make an educated guess, your leg appears to be broken 3 places." For years, Frank's knees or elbows would start aching like clockwork, 8:50 a.m. and 8:50 p.m. every single day. At first, he brushed it off. "Getting older, I guess," he thought. But as the years went by, the pain never stopped. Concerned, he started seeing doctor after doctor, but no one could figure it out. Desperate, he turned to alternative medicine. No luck. He even visited some shady pain management clinics, handing out pills like candy. Still nothing. The pain always came back, twice a day, every day. At his wit's end, he finally visits the worst doctor in town. A guy with a filthy clinic, a suspended medical license, and a track record of losing every lawsuit filed against him. But Frank has nowhere else to turn. Sitting on the exam table in a flimsy paper gown, he pleads, "Doc, every day at 8:50, sharp, I'm in pain. The best doctors in the state have no clue what's causing it." The sleazy doctor, slouched in his chair, stained lab coat barely clinging to his shoulders, takes a long drag from his filterless cigarette, looks Frank up and down, and finally mutters, "It's simple. You've got 10 to 90s. A 70-year-old man marries a 20-year-old woman. A year later, they arrive at the hospital delivery room. The wife gives birth to a healthy, beautiful baby boy, weighing 3.5 kilograms. The nurse looks at the old man and asks, "Yours?" "Yes," the old man replies proudly. "Congratulations," the nurse says. "Well," the old man grins, "the old engine still runs?" 2 years later, they return to the delivery room. This time, the wife gives birth to a healthy baby girl, again 3.5 kilograms. The nurse raises an eyebrow and asks, "Yours?" "Yep," the old man replies, beaming. "Well done," the nurse says. "Told you," the old man chuckles. "The engine still runs." Another 2 years pass, and once again they show up at the delivery room. The wife delivers another healthy baby boy, same weight as before. The nurse smirks and asks, "Yours?" "Of course," the old man replies, chest puffed out. "Congratulations," the nurse says, shaking her head. "That's impressive." "Well," says the old man, "the engine is still running." The nurse leans in, lowers her voice, and says, "Might be time for an oil change. This one came out black." A woman starts dating a doctor, and before long she becomes pregnant. They panic. They aren't ready for a baby and don't know what to do. Around the same time she's due to give birth, a priest is admitted to the hospital for a prostate gland infection. The doctor gets an idea. "I've got a plan," he tells the woman. "After I operate on the priest, we'll tell him the baby is a miracle." "You think that'll work?" she asks. "It's worth a try," the doctor says. So the doctor delivers the baby, then performs the priest's surgery. Afterward, he walks into the priest's room and says, "Father, you're not going to believe this." "What? What happened?" asks the priest. "You gave birth to a child," the doctor exclaims. "That's impossible," the priest protests. "I just did the operation," the doctor insists. "It's a miracle. Here's your baby." 15 years go by, and one day the priest realizes he must tell the boy the truth. He sits the boy down and says, "Son, there's something I need to tell you. I'm not your father." The boy looks confused. "What do you mean you're not my father?" The priest takes a deep breath and says, "I'm your mother. The archbishop is your father." A ridiculously handsome man believed it was his God-given duty to marry the perfect woman and create children of unmatched beauty. Determined, he searched high and low along the East Coast, but found no one who met his impossible standards. So he headed west. One day, he came across a farmer with 3 breathtakingly gorgeous daughters, so stunning they nearly took his breath away. Excited, he explained his mission to the farmer and asked for permission to marry one of them. The farmer nodded. "Well, you've come to the right place. My girls are all looking to get married. Take your pick." So, the man went on a date with the first daughter. The next morning, the farmer asked, "Well, what do you think?" The man hesitated. "She's beautiful, but she's just a wee bit, hardly noticeable, pigeon-toed." The farmer nodded and suggested he try another daughter, so the man took the second daughter out. The next day, the farmer asked again. The man sighed. "She's stunning, but she's just a little bit, barely noticeable, cross-eyed." The farmer shrugged and told him to try the third daughter. The next morning, the man ran up to the farmer, beaming. "She's perfect, absolutely perfect. I've found my bride." So they got married right away. Months later, when their baby was born, the man rushed to the nursery, and his jaw dropped in horror. The baby, while cute, had the ugliest face he had ever seen. Panicked, he ran to his father-in-law. "How is this possible? My wife is perfect, and I am perfect. What happened?" The farmer leaned back and sighed. "Well, she was just a wee bit. Not that you could hardly tell. Pregnant when you met her." Mandy nervously approaches her mother. "Mom, can we talk? It's serious." Concerned for her college-aged daughter, Nina immediately stops what she's doing and makes them both coffee. They sit in silence for a moment, Mandy fidgeting anxiously. "Sweetie, what is it?" her mother asks gently. "You know you can tell me anything." Mandy takes a deep breath. "Well, you might judge me for this. And please, don't tell Dad." Now even more concerned, Nina leans in. "What is it? You know Jeremy, our neighbor, the one I study with?" "Yes," her mother answers cautiously. "And you know his dad, Ronald?" Nina's eyes narrow. "Uh-huh." Mandy swallows hard. "I think I'm in love with him," her mother gasps. "Absolutely not. I won't allow it." "Mom, you can't tell me who to love," Mandy protests. "He could be your father," Nina shouts. Mandy glares. "I don't care about the age difference." Her mother sighs and rubs her temples. "No, sweetheart, I think you misunderstood me." There was once a Viking warrior so fierce and powerful that no one dared to challenge him in battle. Seeking a new test of his abilities, he took up a different kind of conquest, staring contests. Sailing across Europe, he challenged anyone brave enough to face him, boasting that he had never lost. To make things more interesting, he even promised to give up all the gold he had pillaged to anyone who could defeat him. Word of his challenge spread far and wide, eventually reaching an Irish couple with a very unusual daughter. She had been born without eyelids. Believing she was destined to win, her parents sent a messenger inviting the Viking to Ireland for a showdown. The Viking, eager to prove himself, accepted the challenge and set sail the very next day. When he arrived, the contest began. Hours passed, then days. Nearly a week later, the Viking's eyes remained wide open, unblinking. At last, the exhausted girl admitted defeat, forfeiting the match. Her baffled mother turned to her husband. How in the world did he keep his eyes open for so long, even against someone with no eyelids? Her husband sighed and shook his head. "I don't know, dear, but you can lead a Norse to daughter, and you still can't make him blink." A boy named Carol had a rough childhood, constantly teased for his uncommon name. No matter where he went, the jokes followed. But over time, he learned to embrace it. Years later, he married his high school sweetheart, and when their first child was born, he let his wife choose the name. Inspired by Carol's uniqueness, she decided on something just as special. She named their daughter Love. Unfortunately, History repeated itself. Love faced endless teasing at school, just like her father had. One day, after an especially tough day, she stormed home in tears. "Why would you give me such a stupid name?" she screamed at her dad. Wanting to protect his wife, Carol took the blame. "I'm sorry, sweetheart," he said. Enraged, Love grabbed her toy dart gun and fired. A foam dart struck Carol square in the chest. Gasping dramatically, he clutched his heart and collapsed to the floor. Moments later, his wife walked through the door and saw him lying there. "Oh my God, what happened?" she cried, rushing to his side. With his last breath, Carol pulled her close and whispered, "Shot through the heart, and you're to blame. Darling, you gave Love a bad name." A small-town farmer decides to take a rare trip into the city. He's a self-sufficient man, but his pantry is running low, so there's no avoiding it. Seeing an opportunity, he brings along his youngest child, eager to impress them with his worldly knowledge. As they drive, they chatter away until they reach their first stop, the bakery. "Where are we, Dad?" the little one asks, excitedly. "This is John the baker, youngest. You see, when Dad doesn't make any bread, John makes it for him." The child's eyes widen. "Is it as good as yours?" With a small grin, he replies, "No, mine is better." Then off he goes to buy some bread. At the next stop, the child pipes up again. "Where are we now?" "This is Ted's liquor store, youngest. When Dad doesn't make any beer, Ted makes it for him." The little one thinks for a moment, then asks, "Is it as good as yours?" The farmer chuckles. "No, mine is better," and heads inside to pick up some beer. Finally, they arrive at the butcher's shop. By now, the little one has caught on. "So then, Dad," they begin, thinking hard. The farmer smiles. "Yes, that's right. This is Tom the butcher, and when Dad hasn't made any sausages, Tom makes them for you." The child finishes hesitantly. "That's right. You are a smart one," the farmer exclaims. "And yours are better," the child shouts proudly. Beaming, the farmer nods. "Exactly." Then off he goes to collect some sausages. On the drive home, they pass a postal truck coming the other way. "Hey, Dad," the child exclaims. "It's Pete the postman." The farmer nods but senses what's coming next. Quickly, he says, "That's right, but we need Pete. Your dad is a farmer, and he can do a lot of things, but he can't do what Pete does." The child thinks for a moment, then grins. "Oh, I know. Mom says so, too." A young girl working on a school paper came to her father and asked, "Dad, what's the difference between anger and exasperation?" Her father smiled. "It's mostly a matter of degree. Let me show you." He picked up the phone, dialed a random number, and waited. "Hello?" a man answered. "Hi, is Melvin there?" the father asked. "There's no one named Melvin here. Learn to check your numbers before calling." The man snapped before hanging up. The father turned to his daughter. "See? That was irritation. Now let's see anger." He dialed the number again. "Hello?" The same man answered, already annoyed. "Yeah, hi. Is Melvin there? Are you kidding me? I just told you there's no Melvin here. Stop calling." The phone slammed down so hard they could almost hear it through the receiver. The father chuckled. "Now that was anger, but let me show you what exasperation looks like." He dialed the number one last time. The phone picked up, and before the man could say a word, the father calmly said, "Hello, this is Melvin. Any messages for me?" The teacher wanted to help the class get to know each other better while practicing spelling, so she announced, "Today I want each of you to stand up, tell us your father's occupation, spell it, and say one thing he would give us if he were here today." Marcy eagerly raised her hand. "My father is a banker. Banker. If he were here today, he'd give us all a shiny new penny." "Very nice, Marcy," the teacher said. "Who's next?" Kevin stood up. "My dad is a baker. Baker. If he were here, he'd give us all a fresh cookie." "Wonderful, Kevin." Next, Jeff stood up. "My dad is an accountant. AK. No, wait. ACK. The teacher cut in. "Why don't you sit down, Jeff? Think about it and try again later." Just then, little Johnny shot his hand up, grinning ear to ear. The teacher sighed but nodded. "All right, Johnny, go ahead. My dad is a bookie, Bookie, and if he were here, he'd give us all 20. One odds that Jeff never spells accountant correctly." An old man was walking through the desert with his donkey when he arrived at a village. The villagers welcomed him warmly, offering him food, shelter, and care for his donkey. During dinner, they served him camel milk. Surprised, he asked why they drank something so bitter. "We have no choice," said the village chief. "We've been cursed with an everlasting drought. Water is so scarce that we save every drop for our crops." The old man stroked his beard thoughtfully. "As it happens, I am one of the wise. I know how to bring rain, but first you must bring me a large bucket full of water. I need some to summon more." The villagers, desperate for relief, gathered every last drop they had. By morning, they had just enough to fill a bucket and presented it to the old man. He took the water, walked into his host's house, and shut the door. Moments later, a curious child peeked through the window and gasped, running back to alert the villagers. By the time they burst in, the old man had already finished washing his clothes and was calmly hanging them to dry. "Shame, shame on you, old man," the chief bellowed. "Our children go thirsty, and you wasted our last water on laundry." But just as he finished speaking, the sky darkened. Clouds gathered overhead. Moments later, rain poured down, heavy and unrelenting, lasting for 5 days straight. The village's reservoirs overflowed, their crops thrived, the people celebrated, and the old man was honored as a hero. Even the chief apologized for ever doubting him. As the old man prepared to leave, the curious child finally worked up the courage to ask, "But how did you do it? How did you bring the rain?" The old man smiled and shrugged. "Simple. It always rains when I hang my clothes to dry." A guy had just started dating a girl he really liked, so he was always looking for ways to impress her. One night, they were at a Rolling Stones concert. During a break, the guy excused himself, but instead of heading to the bathroom, he slipped backstage. There, he spotted Mick Jagger getting ready. Desperate, he approached him. "Mick, please, I need a huge favor. My girlfriend and I are massive fans, and I really want to impress her. Could you come over during the show and act like we're old friends?" Jagger sighed. "I don't know, mate. I'm kind of busy here." "Please, just one moment. After that, I'll never bother you again." Jagger rolled his eyes. All right, if it'll get you off my back." Later, during a break between songs, Mick Jagger walked up to their seats. "Hey, man, long time no see. How have you been?" The guy barely looked up and waved dismissively. Mick, can't you see I'm on a date?" A guy walks into Home Depot and tells an employee he needs an electric saw to cut down trees. "I got just what you need," the employee says, showing him a top-of-the-line model. "This beauty can cut down 100 trees a day." The guy buys it and heads home. A week later, he storms back into the store, frustrated. "This saw is terrible. I could barely cut 50 trees a day." That's odd," the employee says. "Tell you what, try this upgraded model. It can handle 200 trees a day." The guy exchanges the saw and leaves. A week later, he returns, even angrier. "This one's no better. I could only cut down 100 trees a day." "I'm really sorry, sir," the employee says, "but I just got this brand new top-of-the-line model. It can cut 400 trees a day." The guy takes it hopeful. A week later, he storms in, fuming. "I give up. No matter what I do, I can't cut more than 200 trees a day." The employee frowns. "That doesn't make sense. Let me check it out." He picks up the saw, pulls the cord, and fires up the motor. "Rrrr!" The sound roars through the store. The guy jumps back, wide-eyed. "What the hell is that noise?" It was the morning after their wedding night, and the husband, still feeling a bit cheeky, decided to text his mother-in-law. "Hey, just wanted to let you know, the product you sent isn't quite what I expected. The seal was already broken. Seems like it's been used before. I'm considering returning it and asking for an exchange." His smart mother-in-law quickly replied, "Dear Bob," it started, "there's no return or exchange policy on this product. It comes as is. However, you might try using a little alum to improve its performance. And just so you know," the message continued, "the company has long since stopped making new models. So make do with what you have and take good care of it. After all, it's built to last a lifetime." Two identical twin brothers live together. One is a well-respected dentist, while the other can't seem to hold a job. Instead of looking for work, he prefers to lounge around the house all day. One Saturday, the dentist gets hungry and puts his brother on the spot. "Get off your lazy behind and go grab us some food," he says. After some grumbling, the lazy brother takes the car and heads to the store. Meanwhile, the dentist, enjoying his day off, decides to take a nap. He turns off his phone so he won't be disturbed. About 30 minutes later, disaster strikes. The lazy brother gets into a head-on collision at an intersection near the grocery store. He's unconscious, barely clinging to life. Paramedics rush him to the hospital, but his condition is critical. The hospital staff try calling his brother, but of course his phone is off. Back at home, the dentist wakes to a knock at the door. At first, he ignores it, assuming it's just a solicitor, but the knocking persists. Annoyed, he gets up to yell at whoever it is. When he opens the door, his frustration turns to shock. Standing there is the Grim Reaper. Tattered cloak, skeletal frame, scythe and all. "Oh no," the Reaper groans. "This always happens with identical twins." "What do you mean?" the dentist asks. "Your brother was in a terrible accident. His time on Earth is up. I've come to take him to the underworld. Sorry for the mix-up, but I must be going now." The dentist panics. "Wait, isn't there some way I can challenge you for his life? I mean, you made the mistake." The Grim Reaper thinks for a moment. I suppose a challenge is fair. What do you propose?" The dentist grins. "Let's see who has the cleanest teeth. 5 minutes of brushing each, and we decide who wins." The Grim Reaper bursts into laughter. "You fool! I will destroy you in any challenge. But very well, let's begin." They head to the bathroom. The Reaper pulls back his cloak, revealing a perfectly polished skull. He grabs a toothbrush, loads it with toothpaste, and scrubs away. After 5 minutes, his teeth shine so brightly they practically glow. "Your turn," he smirks. The dentist, undeterred, picks up another toothbrush and starts brushing like a man possessed. 5 minutes later, he spits, smiles, and reveals a dazzling set of teeth, so brilliantly clean that the Grim Reaper can see his own reflection in them. The Reaper stares in disbelief. "Impossible," he mutters. Then, with a defeated sigh, he lowers his head. "You win, human. Your brother will live." With a puff of smoke, he vanishes. At that exact moment in the hospital, the lazy brother suddenly wakes up. Not only is he alive, but he feels perfectly fine. No injuries, no pain, nothing. Just then, the phone by his bed rings. It's his brother, the dentist. "Hey, bro," the lazy twin says. "You won't believe this. Apparently, I got hit by a car. They said I almost died." The dentist chuckles. "That's funny, bro. Today, you might say I also had a brush with death." A doctor at an insane asylum decided to take his patients to a baseball game. For weeks beforehand, he carefully coached them on how to follow his commands. Finally, game day arrived and everything went smoothly. When the national anthem began, the doctor shouted, "Up nuts!" and all the patients stood up in unison. When it ended, he yelled, "Down nuts!" and they all sat back down. After a home run, he called, "Cheer nuts!" and they erupted in applause. When the umpire made a terrible call, he instructed, "Boo, nuts!" and they all booed passionately. Feeling confident, the doctor left his assistant in charge and went to grab a hot dog and a beer. But when he returned, chaos had erupted. Fans were fleeing, security was struggling, and his patients were causing a full-blown riot. He frantically found his assistant. "What the hell happened?" The assistant, wide-eyed and panicked, stammered, "I don't know. Everything was fine until some guy walked by and yelled, 'Peanuts!'" Mildred, the town gossip and self-appointed guardian of the church's morals, had a habit of sticking her nose where it didn't belong. Many in the congregation disapproved of her meddling, but they kept their thoughts to themselves, partly out of politeness and partly out of fear of becoming her next target. One afternoon, Mildred saw Sam, a quiet and hard-working new member of the church, with his old pickup parked outside the town's only pub. That was all the evidence she needed. The next Sunday, she wasted no time spreading the word. "We all know what it means when a man's truck is parked outside a bar," she declared to anyone who would listen. Sam, a man of few words, simply stared at her for a long moment. Then, without a word of protest, he turned and walked away. That evening, just as the sun was setting, Sam quietly drove to Mildred's house, parked his pickup in front of her driveway, and left it there all night. One Monday morning, a preacher arrived at his church office and was met with an unusual problem. A dead mule, or jackass for the knowing, lying in the churchyard. Not sure what to do, he called the police. Since there was no sign of foul play, they referred him to the health department. The health department told him there was no health risk, so he should call the sanitation department. The sanitation department, in turn, told him they couldn't remove the mule without authorization from the mayor. Now, the preacher knew the mayor well, and also knew he had a terrible temper, but with no other choice, he made the call. The mayor picked up and, true to form, immediately started ranting. "Why on earth are you calling me about this? Isn't it your job to bury the dead?" The preacher took a deep breath, said a quick prayer for wisdom, and replied, "Yes, Mayor, it is my duty to bury the dead, but I always like to notify the next of kin first." Mitch was at the racetrack, losing his shirt, when he noticed a priest step onto the track and bless the forehead of a horse in the fourth race. To Mitch's amazement, the horse, a complete long shot, ended up winning. Intrigued, he watched as the priest did the same thing before the fifth race. Mitch hurried to the betting window and placed a small bet on the blessed horse. Sure enough, it won too. By the sixth race, Mitch was convinced he had discovered a surefire system. He bet bigger, and once again the priest's pick came in first. Race after race, the priest's blessings turned long-shot horses into winners. Mitch's pockets were overflowing. By the final race, Mitch knew this was his moment. He ran to the ATM, withdrew his entire life savings, and waited to see which horse would receive the priest's blessing. The priest stepped onto the track and, as expected, blessed a horse. But this time, he didn't just touch its forehead. He also blessed its eyes, ears, and hooves. Mitch was ecstatic. This had to be the ultimate winner. He bet every cent he had. Then he watched in horror as the horse came in dead last. Shocked and broke, Mitch stormed down to the track and confronted the priest. "Father, all day long the horses you blessed won. Then, for the last race, you blessed that old nag, and now I've lost everything." The priest sighed and shook his head. "Son, that's the problem with most people. You can't tell the difference between a simple blessing and last rites." Two young men appear in court after being arrested for drug use. The judge looks at them and says, "You both seem like decent young men, so I'm going to give you a second chance instead of jail time. Over the weekend, I want you to go out and convince others to stay away from drugs. On Monday, you'll report back and tell me how many people you persuaded. If you don't show results, you're going straight to jail." Monday arrives, and the judge calls the first guy forward. "How did you do?" "Well, Your Honor, I convinced 17 people to give up drugs forever." 17? That's impressive. How did you manage that?" "I used a simple diagram. I drew 2 circles like this. Oh. Then I told them, the big circle is your brain before drugs. The small one is your brain after drugs." "Very clever." The judge nods approvingly. Then he turns to the second guy. "And you? How did you do?" "Your Honor, I convinced 156 people to give up drugs forever." The judge's eyes widen. 156? That's incredible. How on earth did you do it?" "Well, Your Honor, I used a similar diagram. I drew 2 circles like this. Oh. Then I pointed to the small circle and said, 'This is your sphincter before prison.'" A thief and a politician who were good friends walked into a chocolate shop. While browsing, the thief quickly swiped 3 chocolate bars and slipped them into his pocket without anyone noticing. As they left the store, he smirked and said to the politician, "See that? I'm the best thief ever. I stole 3 chocolates and no one saw a thing. Bet you can't beat that." The politician chuckled. "Oh, you think that's impressive? Watch this. I'll show you real stealing." He confidently walked back into the shop and approached the counter. "Excuse me, sir," he said to the shopkeeper. "Would you like to see a magic trick?" The shopkeeper, intrigued, replied, "Sure, why not?" The politician held out his hand. "Hand me a chocolate bar." The shopkeeper passed him one, and the politician ate it. "Give me another." The shopkeeper hesitated, but handed over a second bar. The politician ate that one, too. "One more, please." Now looking suspicious, the shopkeeper handed him a third chocolate. The politician ate that one as well. The shopkeeper frowned. "All right, but where's the magic?" The politician grinned and pointed to the thief. Check my friend's pocket.